The White Sox and Guardians present isn't so good. So let's discuss the future. More importantly, the upcoming draft that is especially pivotal for the White Sox with prospect guru Justin Lada on the crossover edition of Locked On White Sox, Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and contributor of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, here with Justin Lada from Locked On Guardians, a prospect expert who's been trusted by other Sox podcasts to come on and give objective analysis when it comes to the White Sox future. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox and Locked On Guardians your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or at Locked On Guardians if you've not done so already. And also follow, subscribe to the shows at wherever you get your podcast. So Justin is with me today to discuss the upcoming draft, the similar future ownership situations that the White Sox and the Guardians have, and how the Guardians actually might harm the White Sox hope of getting some prospects back in the trade market because, well, Cleveland, they've got better players to trade if they do choose to sell. But before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so Justin, the White Sox scouting director, has said that they have basically two college arms that they like. You know, they like a couple others, but when it comes to the two college arms, my guess is it's probably Jamie Arnold or Liam Doyle potentially falling to them, or maybe Tyler Bremner. Is it, first of all, possible that Arnold and Doyle fall? And what could those three, basically bring to the White Sox?
Yeah, what's going on, Todd? Man, I think that one of them could fall there. I mean, if it were me picking, I don't think I'd let either of them fall. I do like Jamie Arnold quite a bit more than Liam Doyle. My problem with Liam Doyle is that he is probably, I feel like he's going to be a reliever. I'm not a big fan of that delivery he's got. I know the metrics are really good and he's had a great season and all that stuff, but I mean, I guess there's always the chance they could smooth out the delivery, slow him down a little bit, but then you risk the chance of changing what makes him really great and dominant, right? So I feel like there's a lot of relief risk in Liam Doyle. So if other teams felt the same way, maybe he falls there. I don't know. It's an incredibly weak draft. Like, this is not a good season for the draft. It's just not. Like, there's a couple college arms, obviously at the top. Like, I think who's going to go first is going to wind up being the lefty from LSU, Kate Anderson. If I had to pick from the two, I'd pick Jamie Arnold. But honestly, if I was picking, I would not let Jamie Arnold get to the White Sox. A, because I think there's teams above the White Sox that definitely would like him and need him. And B, as a Guardians host, I don't want to see another devastating left-hander in that organization. The thought of Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz already scares the crap out of me, watching this Guardians offense as bad as it is now. If you add a Jamie Arnold to that organization, that's even a little more devastating. I do think there's a pretty good chance Tyler Bremner is there. Bremner has been long one of my favorite arms in this class, going back to last season. I think if I had college arms, Kate Anderson had a good late stretch this season. So that's why he's kind of vaulted to the top. But if going into last season, I would say that Arnold and Bremner were like my 1-2 coming into this class as far as college arms.
All right, so being the amateur guy that I am, I'm glad that you brought up Doyle maybe being more a reliever, because I only saw him a few times, and the few times I saw him, it just seemed like the moment got too big for him. So that would be the other reason why I'd probably maybe stay away if he's going to be more a reliever profile. I mean, if the SEC tournament can overwhelm you and get you so amped up where you look like you're just, all hyper out there, just imagine pitching like in the 8th, 9th inning. I mean, he's got the stuff. I agree. He's a talented arm, but there's a lot of the mental makeup. But again, that's old school scouting thinking. If you only saw him a few times, I trust that, you probably watched him a lot more time. In Bremner's case, I've seen that he doesn't really have a good extension on his pitches. Is there a way that mechanically he can get better extension maybe?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the Guardians love guys with natural extension, I could say. So it's hard for me to believe you can teach that kind of thing unless you change your delivery. So that definitely is a bit of a struggle right there. And yeah, that's one of the issues that he's got against him right now is the fastball may have a hard time playing at the next level. So I do think Jamie Arnold's the best pick for them. And, again, go back to Doyle a little bit. Doyle's got major league stuff. Like, I think he can get major league hitters out with the stuff he's got. I think the only concern for me really is the delivery. I know he does have, like you said, it gets a little amped up watching him. And just from listening, though, and just watching deliveries over the years, like that delivery just makes me feel like, and it's not like he's a huge guy. I mean, he's 6'2", 220. That's a really good size for a pitcher. But with that delivery, like, I just kind of feel like it's unorthodox. And he really, he really is out there like giving 100% every delivery. And that's a little more common these days, but it makes you wonder how long that's going to last for him. But yeah, I think the other thing with Bremner too is that, like you said, the extension. I don't know, the stuff there is just so good, and the White Sox have been, I feel like, better at developing pitching recently. So maybe there's something to be said there. And UC Santa Barbara's had some good arms over the years, so maybe there's a chance that he can find a little more there, or you can do something to tweak his pitches. Maybe you change the fastball shape, maybe you add a cutter, maybe you add a sinker that keeps guys off the four seam. Because the extension thing, like, yeah, it's going to affect your fastball, but everything else that he has in his arsenal, I really like the changeup. He's got a decent slider. If you can add a few more pitches and keep guys off the four seam, there's a really good chance you can combat that. But as far as extension goes, that's a really good question. I think teams are still trying to figure that out, because I know Cleveland, like I said, really values extension.
Well, and I like that you brought up that the White Sox are developing pitching, because it almost seems like they're trying to replicate what the Guardians are doing. The only difference that the White Sox did is they just went out and got Brian Bannister, who's a pitching, guru. They got him from San Francisco. He was also with Boston and that type of stuff. So they've really focused in. And the other reason is they don't pay pitchers, so they have to develop them. So that's kind of one of the things that they're doing, is kind of replicating the Guardians. Another pitcher that the White Sox could go with, that the White Sox scouting director kind of mentioned that they like in a prep prospect, that I'm just going to assume is Kruz Schoolcraft. Hopefully I got that name right, because it's the coolest name I've ever seen. Kyler McDaniel on ESPN, though, he wrote that maybe the White Sox could gamble and he could fall to 44 in the second round, but is that lasting too long for him? Do you think he gets picked up a little bit sooner?
Man, I love Kruz Schoolcraft. I was actually just kind of like writing him up and doing a little bit of a deep dive on him before we started recording this. And yeah, I really love Kruz Schoolcraft. He's another guy. Now, he gets good extension on his delivery. It's a I think it's a double plus fastball. I think he's got a really great changeup. And I also love his background a little bit. It's a guy who has battled dyslexia his whole life, and he's really worked on that, at least in terms of channeling things into baseball. So I really love the character background there and the things he's had to overcome. I think it is a gamble trying to get him down there, because the talent's so good. I mean, he's going to Tennessee, right? And Tennessee's a strong pull right now, baseball wise, collegiately. And he can be a hitter. Like, I don't know about the hip tool overall, because he's 6'8", and that's, some long levers, but he's got real power. He could be a first base target. He can play two ways in college. So I feel like that'd be a big gamble to float him down that far. But the White Sox, they're picking 10th. They've got money. They've got money to burn in this draft. So maybe they can do it if they can go under slot with somebody in the first round. I don't know if that I would do it. And I think he's probably safely somewhere in the top 30 of the draft. So yeah, if you got the money to do, he might be top 20, honestly. So that might be a big risk, but he's a great talent, and I really like him. So he'd be a great pick for the White Sox. Might be a little bit high for where they're picking. So I think I see the point about trying to float him to the second round. But he's a good talent. If they can land him in the second round, that would be a massive steal.
Yeah, I mean, but he screams too. Like, Major League draft, the baseball draft is much different than obviously NBA or the NFL draft. But the one thing that is always with all the drafts, if you like a guy, just take him. I mean, who cares if the fan base gets mad? Just take them, that type of stuff. Who are some of the better draft prospects that would be available in that pick 27 to 44 range? The White Sox will be picking 44, and the Guardians obviously picking 27. So those guys, any of those guys that you get there can be available to both those teams in those ranges.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough draft. As far as the Guardians are concerned, like, I don't know which way they're gonna go. When they pick this late, I tend to believe they're gonna go more high school, because they typically have. So, like, there's Josh Hammond from North Carolina, who I really like a lot. I've really had to come around to him, I think, a little bit later in the cycle. I'm trying to think and go through the other high school guys that I just wrote up. I know there's a bunch. I did just write up Kruz Schoolcraft. I don't know that Schoolcraft really fits the Guardians at 27. There's a number of college ways they can go too. If they don't go with the high school route. I do like Ethan Conrad a lot from Wake Forest. I don't know where he's going to go, because he had shoulder surgery this past year, and he didn't really play a lot of college ball. And he's a transfer from Marist, so he hasn't played a whole lot of upper level competition. So I worry about that. Andrew Fisher is a guy who go in the back of the first round. A lot of teams like Patrick Forbes from Louisville, so he's a fun one. Cam Canarillo would be a really interesting target between that range to me, because this is a guy at Clemson a lot of people thought 2 years ago was going to be a potential like top 10, even maybe some 1-1 whispers in the 2025 class, but he also had labrum surgery last year, and he is just now coming back from that. He played through it, and the speed's good, the hit tool's good, the defense is good. Just didn't have a whole lot of pop, and if he can regain some of that with the shoulder healing, maybe that's a way he can go. So it's a real toss-up. I do think the draft gets a lot better deeper we go, but man, the first round of this draft, at least the top 15 to me, is just not. It's not as exciting as it was a year ago or years past, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, just from what you read in that, there's some good prospects, like the 5 shortstops look good that for high school that are beyond Holiday and Willits. But you're right, it's a bunch of good, but if you're looking to get great, it's next year's draft. So thankfully that the Colorado Rockies are losing a ton. That where the White Sox, they can be in the lottery, and hey, for the Guardians, maybe they win the lottery again. That type of stuff, and where it's trending to. Well, the White Sox and Guardians have ownership succession plans. Let's discuss how they are similar and different, and that is after the break on a crossover edition of Locked On White Sox, Locked On Guardians. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 plus parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And think about it. You don't got time to waste going through an automated system. You got to get the job done right. You need the right part. So Supply House wants to make sure you're taken care of. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of skilled professionals already taking advantage. Now it's your turn too. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. And I've been telling my brother-in-law, he's in the plumbing business, convince his company, use Supply House with all the advantages and great customer service they offer. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Welcome back to a crossover edition of Locked On White Sox, Locked On Guardians. I'm your host, Todd Welter of Locked On White Sox, along with Justin Lada. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, man. Of Locked On Guardians. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or at Locked On Guardians if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox and Locked On Guardians is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. All right, so Justin, when is David Blitzer potentially actually going to take over the Guardians?
Yeah, everything we've seen so far, everything we've read says it's going to be 2028. So there's still 3 more years till this happens. That's when he can take a controlling interest. But who knows how things will change over the next couple of years, too, whether he jumps ship to somewhere else like John Sherman, because when John Sherman was the part owner of the Guardians or minority owner of the Guardians, he had a clause in his contract to also take over full-time ownership or controlling interest and left to buy the Royals. And then obviously we have the looming lockout next offseason. So things could change. But as of right now, I think we're hearing 2028.
All right, so whenever we've talked off mic, we have actually talked about the lockout. How much of a role is that playing in maybe the Dolan's keeping control of the team during this time? Because the White Sox are kind of in the same situation with Justin Ishbia having the option to buy the White Sox as soon as 2029. Now, part of that is Jerry Reinsdorf just wants to own a team because as long as he's alive, he wants to own a team. But there is some thinking that, hey, Jerry will take care of the CBA battle because even though he's not as hawkish as he used to be, he's well-versed in this. So do you think that maybe this is more of, hey, let the Dolan family take care of that, the heirs, all that. And then once this lockout is cleared out, we'll figure it out from there?
I don't know. That's a really good question because we never hear from the Dolan ownership group. I mean, I can't tell you the last time we actually heard him speak on anything. So, and normally when he does speak publicly, it's usually putting their foot in their mouth and not really good press for them. So it's probably actually better that he's silent in terms of not saying anything that isn't advantageous for them. So I don't really know. I do think the Dolans would love to see a salary cap, obviously, as would many owners. We'll see where that goes. But I really don't know how the lockout fits into their plans. For a long time there, Paul was holding out the team because he was hoping to somehow get the Guardians to win a World Series before his parents passed away and they were getting older. And obviously Larry passed coming into the season. So, that's off the table now. And like I said, he does have the controlling interest in contract to go to David Blitzer in 2028. So I don't know how the lockout really works into his long-term plan at this point because we just never hear from the guy.
Is David Blitzer kind of seen as this, white knight who will eventually infuse tons of cash into the Guardians? Because the one thing it seems like the Guardians they just don't ever have the money to be able to keep everybody that they've had, because that's the other belief with the White Sox and the Justin Ishbia is, well, he's the billionaire white knight. He's going to come in, he's going to infuse all this money into the White Sox, and they're going to go on and win, the World Series all the time. Is that kind of the same way with the Guardians?
A lot of fans want to think that way, and I get it, because the Guardians' payroll's never been great, and the last time it was actually in a spot where it was competitive in terms of the rest of the league, and it wasn't even that competitive. I think it was out of the bottom 10, so that was as far as they've gotten. But that was when John Sherman was the minority owner and had an option to buy the team before he went out and bought the Kansas City Royals. David Blitzer's been on board for 2 years now, and he's not put any money into this team. The payroll has been stagnant since he came on. So at the time for David Blitzer to really push the payroll and kind of make things move forward, it would have been right now while the Dolans are still controlling owners and he is just a minority owner. But, he's got ownership in the New Jersey Devils and the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Sixers are building a new arena, and a lot of that's going to be private money, I've heard. He's got money in soccer teams, those kind of things. So, I don't know how much money he's really putting in right now. And the long-standing belief here is that he wants to build Ballpark Village in Cleveland, similar to what the Atlanta has with the Battery down there. And that includes buying up real estate, which he started to do a little bit of, I think we've heard. And then putting up, retail, shops, apartments, and then profiting off of the real estate and the rent for all those. So, yeah, a lot of people want to believe that David Blitzer is going to take over in 2028, and the Guardians' payroll is going to be like 150 million, whatever. I don't see it, because if he was going to infuse a bunch of money, the time would be now, when he only has to put in, a quarter of that and push the Dolan's payroll up a little bit. And if he's going to spend all this money on property to build up Ballpark Village, that's a long-term, project to put capital towards. So I don't think we're going to see any significant movement payroll wise from Blitzer until 2028. I think Blitzer for Cleveland, this is I don't have any inside information on this, but this is my working theory. I think Blitzer is banking on a salary cap. I think the timing for him to take over, I think he is hoping that there's going to be a salary cap by the time he is the owner.
Yeah, I mean, because it sounds like to me he's going to have to make those mortgage payments on the property. I mean, even though you're buying it, you're probably taking out some sort of a mortgage. The owners, why, again, this is my theory. Look at the Chicago Cubs. I mean, the Ricketts family is worth billions, and yet they basically claim poverty and stick their foot in their mouth all the time about, like, oh, we're just hoping to break even. And it's like, you're making money hand over fist. So you're probably just trying to invest on paying down your debt load. I mean, that is the thing where it just does seem like, a lot of these owners are banking on a salary cap, where to me, my working theory is just settle for what you have in the NBA. A better luxury tax, maybe max salaries, or if anything, max years, because you're not going to be able, and you and I have talked about this off camera in our lockdown meetings, and that you're not going to be able to starve these players right now, because you starved them for years in the minors, that there's still a lot of those guys that didn't reap the benefits now of at least this somewhat relative decent pay. So I see where it's going to be hard for the owners in this round to get a salary cap.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of because everybody's going to not put their best offer forward first, right? You never do that in negotiations. So what, you got to look at, like, what do the players have as a bargaining chip? Like, I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know what the players have. They've already gotten the minor leaguers as part of the union, so they're part of that now. Like, what can they bargain? What, like, I don't even know off the top of my head. Do you have anything?
I mean, if I were the players on the flip side, what I would be doing is, fine, you want a salary cap, I want what the NHL has. I want 3 years of club control. I want entry level contracts, and then I'm a granted restricted free agent, but I'm a restricted free agent then. And then, okay, you can get your second contract, and then you're technically your second contract, you are another restricted free agent, but at least you get 2 bites at the restricted free agent apple instead of this, going to arbitration, and all that stuff. So that's what I would say right off the bat. If I'm the players, I would want what the NHL has, that type of stuff. So that'd be the first thing, because what they can do is they can just, the other leverage they can do is, in my opinion, is just do what the NFL did, is decertify and sue the owners, and then you force them to the negotiation table. So there's a little bit of leverage that they have. And especially if you get locked out, they are not, this is just my working theory. If they get locked out, they're not really the ones that are to blame where it was in 94, where they were the strikes. They were the one that initiated the labor stoppage the last go around. This one would be, hey, we want to get to the negotiating table.
It was a lock. It was a lockout the last time too, and it will be a lockout. I guarantee you, as soon as this contract with the CBA expires, Rob Manfred's going to do a lockout. He's already said he's going to. He already said we know it's the best way to get to the negotiating table, and it's not. It's a terrible one. Now that being said, I don't really love Tony Clark's leadership, and I don't love the things he's saying. But yeah, I could see getting to earlier free agency being a potential benefit. We can keep discussing this. I think there's a lot of avenues to this.
Yeah, so we're going to discuss a little bit more, especially the trade deadline, especially how the Guardians could potentially ruin the White Sox ability to try to get anything. And that's after the break on a crossover edition of Locked On White Sox, Locked On Guardians. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. And Gametime has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off exclusive zone deals for the upcoming Cubs versus Red Sox game on July 20th. Hey, it might be the rival Cubs, but you can watch the crosstown rival while also supporting the team that sent the White Sox so much in the Garrett Crochet trade. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets, concert and theater tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to a crossover edition of Locked On White Sox, Locked On Guardians. I'm your host, Todd Welter of Locked On White Sox, along with Justin Lada of Locked On Guardians. And again, shout out to all our everydayers. We appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. So Justin, just getting back to, first of all, the labor negotiations. Yeah. Early free agency is one thing that they could do in terms of that. Another thing that I think they could give back is at least maybe, float the soft cap at least, where they on that. But where I really wanted to get to is Tony Clark, where you said that you don't like his leadership. I actually agree with you that because I remember hearing Ian Happ, I think he was on 670 The Score in Chicago once saying, well, the owners all have money. They all have money. And you're right, Ian, they have billions of dollars. But the one thing where I will disagree with the owners, even though we're all workers, is the business should support the payroll. You shouldn't be just asking these billionaires to chip in all of their money. Like even sometimes fans do that, because if we're doing that, then maybe billionaires should, maybe do things like cure poverty or donate to cure diseases, stuff like that. That's where I disagree sometimes with the players' viewpoint.
I mean, that'd be great if the owners, the billionaires, were putting in money to fund cancer research and all that other kind of stuff. But that is a whole different discussion, obviously. I think the real issue with baseball's ownership these days is that you've got the Dodgers, who have this whole conglomerate, right? It's not just one owner. You don't have, I know Reinsdorf has a ton of money too, and he owns the Bulls, all that kind of stuff. But you see the Castellinis and Bob Nutting and the Dolans. These are all owners who their main source of revenue is the team, right? They don't have outside stuff. Arizona's owner, I think, started some kind of software company. You have Detroit, where the Ilitches started Little Caesars. And John Fisher should be ashamed of himself because his family owns the Gap. They started the Gap. He's got outside money. That's the kind of owner you need in this landscape of baseball now, because you got your Steve Cohen, who is a singular owner for the most part, but he made his money elsewhere. The Dolans, I'll say specifically, they were lawyers. They made all their money on lawyers and kind of a family trust. So those kind of owners worked in the 80s and 90s and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that ownership model works in today's era without a salary cap, because you need to be able to compete with other organizations that have these multi-group ownership things. You have to have outside money. So I agree with you. The business should support the payroll, but I think you also got to be willing to put the money in from your outside stuff too, if you really want to win. Otherwise, I think it's just it's pointless. What's the point of owning it? If your only goal is to make money off this, then you're never going to do it, because you're not going to win enough to consistently draw, because you're going to continue to run bottom rate payrolls. But if you want to win, this should be like a hobby, right? If you got that much money, if you have that much money, this should literally be a hobby for you. It shouldn't be, I'm trying to make money. Like, you should want to make money, but you shouldn't be, you know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't just be sitting here saying my only goal is to make money. Otherwise, you're in the wrong line of work, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no, where I'm thinking, I agree with you. A rich hobbyist owner is the most ideal owner that any team can have, and that's why I think the other reason why, maybe Jay Reinsdorf is playing chess while we're playing checkers is saying, "Hey, Justin, you're worth $4 billion. Let's not have you take over the team right now, because then that's another rich hobbyist owner." But on the flip side, I'm just saying the owner, the players just saying, well, all the owners should just individually add in more money. Well, as you said, that doesn't work if you don't have rich hobbyist owners. And that's what, as you said, like, the current state is you have a lot of these guys that look at it as, this is my portfolio. This is how I make my fortune. And I want it to continue to make my fortune, and that type of stuff. And that's where I think it's, the players are drawing dead when they try to go that way, because it's like, it's not going to work, because the owners are never going to open up their books either. So that's the biggest thing. Switching though to basically buying and selling when it comes to player assets, are the Guardians going to be officially sellers? And if so, who are they going to be sending out the door?
Yeah, I really have a hard time believing they're going to do anything but sell. If they do anything, it might be a soft sell. Carlos Santana for sure will be out the door, because they're going to try to make room for maybe CJ Kafis. I don't know if they have any outfielders to sell. They want to make room for Chase DeLauder. That really only feels like the only one I would go to. Like Paul Sewald, probably a guy that if he pitches well, he's been hurt, but if he pitches well over the next few weeks here, I think that he could be a guy that could push onto the market. I don't know if Jacob Junis is going to attract anything. Maybe someone who needs depth, but I don't think it's going to be anything big. So you're looking at like a Jacob Junis, Carlos Santana, Paul Sewald. I don't think they're going to trade Shane Bieber. I mean, he hasn't even come back yet, so I have a hard time really believing they're going to have enough starts under him to move Shane Bieber at the deadline, because if they give him the qualifying offer, if he pitches the final 2 months of the season and looks really good, then they can get a pick back, rather they wouldn't get as much back for 2 or 3 starts in July. I know there's all this buzz about Clase and Quan. I don't see it right now. I think Clase is something they could explore over the offseason. I'd be really surprised if they did it in season, unless they got like a Godfather offer, which I just don't see happening. Because I think in theory, this team still wants to compete next year. You're talking about Chase DeLauder and Travis Bassano being a part of this team next year. You could potentially have Shane Bieber next year, possibly. They'll have John Means next year. You still have Jose. The Quan thing, I don't think happens in the season either. I don't think there's just enough of an offer out there for them to give him up. But those are all things you can potentially revisit in the offseason.
Yeah, and I think a lot of teams showed in last year's trade market, they're just not willing to move their top 100 those top 100 prospects until the offseason, when it makes sense to have that full year and all whatever that they can get in terms of contribution. I think they're just looking for more quick reinforcements. For the White Sox, looks like they might be looking to trade Adrian Hauser, Mike Tauchman, Luis Robert Jr., and Steven Wilson. So when you stack that up to what the Guardians have, and I mean, everybody's probably going to get, sellers do eventually sell, but it's ideally you want to be able to get the right match. Do you think contenders would look at what Cleveland has to offer and go, you know what, I'm going to go with what Cleveland's given me rather than what the White Sox are offering?
Well, I mean, Hauser should be a pretty good pickup for somebody. He's pitched pretty well, right? So I think that's a good option. And I don't know, like, you're going to have like what, Sandy Alcantara will be out there. And I'm trying to think of any other starters that'll be on the market. I don't think Arizona's going to move Zach Gallen, but I could be wrong. I think there'll be a real emptiness of starting pitching. So I think Hauser will be a good option for somebody. Like, I could see Milwaukee. Milwaukee's kind of got a lot of pitching right now. He can go back there. I don't know. He'll be a good depth option for somebody. I don't know if he's like a playoff rotation guy, but he'd be a good depth option. I could see the Dodgers even getting in on that just because all their arms are hurt again. Who wants Luis Robert Jr.? Like, I legitimately don't know who wants Luis Robert Jr. I think Steven Wilson is a good option for somebody because bullpen arms. I think Wilson versus Sewald. I think Sewald is a better option if he pitches well the next few weeks, because Sewald does have postseason experience. So I think that will be enticing to somebody if he's healthy and he's pitching well. But Wilson's a pretty good arm too. I don't know who's going to want Robert. Like, who needs a center fielder who is barely hitting and can't stay healthy and has that contract? Like, and what do the White Sox want?
He can steal bases. That's what everybody keeps telling themselves. I'm like, I just want to be like, he's Billy Hamilton. That's what he is right now. That's what he is. He can steal some bases. He can still play a decent center field defensively, and he can hit left-handed pitching. That's his value.
That's an expensive tool set, like, to pay for him. And this isn't banana ball. You can't steal first base. So
yeah. But Justin Ishbia, I mean, one of the things that everybody's joking around in White Sox land is Justin Ishbia is paying down debt, and the White Sox suddenly are willing to eat some of Robert Jr.'s salary just to get him off the book. So hey, maybe that's where the Ishbia's money's going right now, as he's becoming the minority owner and that type of stuff. Well, that wraps up this crossover edition of Locked On White Sox, Locked On Guardians. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox and Locked On Guardians your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. And feel free to leave comments about today's discussion. You can leave them on the episode page. Have a great day, and we will see you next week.